I arrived at Maple and Oak at exactly 6:30 p.m., the same time I had confirmed 3 weeks ago. That evening was cold, with wind sweeping through the narrow streets of Savannah. I stepped out of my car, my navy blue dress fluttering as I held 2 carefully wrapped gifts from my mom and my sister. My heart was racing, not from the cold, for from anticipation. I had waited for this family gathering for 4 months. After several times hearing my mom say, "We really should all sit down together for a proper meal," I was the one who took the initiative to organize it. I picked the venue, paid a deposit of $1,200, and sent out customized menus to each person. I poured my heart into this, Mom, and you knew it, I thought, clutching the gifts tighter. Mom said she liked baked salmon, so I added a special portion just for her. My sister Sophie had recently gone vegetarian, so I made sure the restaurant prepared a separate meal for her, too. I planned every detail to make sure no one had a reason to complain. But that evening, the parking lot was empty. No red Jeep that belonged to Mom, no old Honda that Sophie usually drove. No laughter, no noise, no children running around. Just the flickering neon sign of the restaurant shivering under the dark sky. Still, I walked in, holding on to a faint hope that maybe everyone was already inside, waiting in the private room. "Excuse me, I'm Emily Foster," I told the hostess, my voice slightly trembling. "I reserved a private dining room for my family, under the name Foster, at 6:30 p.m. She looked up, paused, then quickly scanned the list on her screen. "Oh, right, the Foster family. But they came in yesterday." I froze. "Yesterday?" "Yes," she said, surprised by my reaction. "Thursday, 6 o'clock, there were 14 people. There was a cake. One woman brought name cards for each person. Very particular." I gave a short, dry laugh that faded halfway through. "No, you must be mistaken. I booked for today, Friday." She frowned and silently scrolled through the booking log. "No, the room was used last night. Would you like to call someone to confirm?" "They planned this without me, didn't they?" I thought, my chest tightening with betrayal. I didn't respond. I was already pulling out my phone. Mom picked up after the third ring. "Hi, sweetheart, what's going on?" Her voice was light, like nothing had happened. I swallowed hard. "Where are you?" Brief pause. Then she gave that soft chuckle I knew all too well. The one she always used right before saying something she knew would hurt but pretended was harmless. "Oh, the dinner was last night, honey. We thought you were busy, so everyone just went ahead without you. But don't worry, I brought you some extra baked salmon. I can swing by tomorrow if you'd like." "You lied to me, Mom. And you don't even care," I said, my voice low but sharp. I gripped the phone tighter. "The dinner was yesterday," I texted clearly. "Maybe you got mixed up." "It was great, though. There was cake and even games. Everyone asked why you weren't there. You deliberately excluded me, and now you're pretending it's my fault," I thought, my anger rising. I didn't respond. Didn't say goodbye. I just ended the call. No one called back. Not Mom, not Sophie, not Uncle Henry, no one. I stared blankly at my phone screen where Mom's message from 3 weeks ago still glowed. "Friday, 6:30 p.m., Maple and Oak. The whole family can't wait to see you." It was still there. Friday. No mistake. I walked back to my car, shut the door, and sat there for a long time. My hands were trembling. I couldn't tell if it was from the cold, the anger, or the wave of rejection flooding my chest. They had come, they had eaten, they had laughed, and I, the one who paid for everything, was left behind like an afterthought. I didn't drive home right away. I went straight to Tybee Island, parked facing the ocean, and sat in silence for nearly 3 hours, watching the waves crash like they could wash away the sting in my chest. I should have been surprised, but honestly, I wasn't. Being the afterthought wasn't new to me. Growing up, I was always the low minimum one in the family. Mom used to joke with the neighbors, "Emily's so independent, I don't have to worry about her like I do Sophie." It sounded like praise, but over time I realized independent was code for, "You don't need love, so we won't give it." Sophie, 4 years younger than me, had dropped out of 4 college programs. Each time Mom consoled her with teary hugs and comforting words like the world had wronged her. Me, after graduating with a full scholarship and landing a job at a marketing agency in Atlanta, got one text. "Glad you're finally doing something useful." You never celebrated me, Mom, but you always had time for Sophie, I thought, the memory cutting deep. But what happened afterward made me feel less like a daughter and more like a walking wallet. When Sophie dropped out for the fourth time, Mom called me one late afternoon. Emily, she's really lost. I think she just needs a fresh start. She's looking into culinary school. Could you help with the tuition? Just a few thousand. Think of it as investing in your sister's future. I hesitated, but I transferred the money anyway. A few months later, another emergency. Sophie couldn't afford the security deposit on a new apartment in Savannah. Mom called again. You're her sister. Help her out a little, will you? It's just temporary. She'll pay you back when things settle. Come on. We're family. Don't be so transactional. I wired $1,500.00. That temporarily lasted nearly a year. Then came the dental procedure. Sophie needed orthodontic work, claimed it was affecting her job prospects. Again, I got the call. I remember it clearly. I had just made my first bonus of the year. I had planned to finally book a trip to Portland, a place I'd dreamed of visiting since college. That ticket was never bought. Instead, Sophie got her new smile, and I got a dry thank you text. Thanks, sis. Over time, I noticed something. Every time they called, it had something to do with money. You used me, Sophie, and I let you, I thought, my heart heavy with realization. Once I tried to speak up. Sophie called around midnight. Her boyfriend had dumped her. She had nowhere to go. I was in the middle of a high-stress project in Chicago, running on almost no sleep. I texted back, maybe try to figure it out on your own this time. Not even 20 minutes later, Mom called, her voice sharp with disappointment. Talent. What kind of sister are you? Family means love, not keeping score. You guilted me into submission, Mom, but I see through it now, I thought, my resolve hardening. I sat frozen in front of my glowing laptop screen, wondering when anyone would realize I wasn't a built-in ATM with a family name. I remember one Mother's Day, I spent all my savings to throw a surprise party, booked a restaurant, hired a private chef, ordered her favorite cake from that little bakery in River Street. Sophie showed up late. No gift, no congratulations, but throughout the entire party, everyone kept bringing her up. She's going through a tough time and still managed to be here. And me? I stood off to the side, pouring drinks and smiling politely. When Mom finally called me over for a photo, she didn't even look up and said, Emily, can you help me with the dishes? Let Sophie rest? I used to think that was her way of loving me, but it turns out that was just how they operated, propping me up as the support beam. Every time Sophie collapsed, every time I felt exhausted, every time I said I couldn't keep doing this, they always had the same response. If you keep score like that, it's not real family. Emily, if being family means I always have to sacrifice unconditionally, then it's just a sweet-sounding noose tightening around my breath. I didn't realize that until the night at Maple and Oak. They didn't forget me by accident. They deliberately excluded me from the dinner I paid for, and when I called to ask, they acted like I was the problem. To be the one who put up with it all, but that night, I started learning how to stand up. 4 weeks after that night at Maple and Oak, I went back to Mom's house in Savannah for the weekend. Sophie was having another episode. This time, she had just broken up with her boyfriend and claimed she was emotionally falling apart. Mom called late one evening, her voice cracking over the phone. Emily, can you come home for a night? She hasn't eaten anything. I think only you can help her feel better. You're manipulating me again, Mom, but this time I'm not blind, I thought, my heart hardening. I wanted to say no, but I caved. That old guilt, do something to keep the family whole, still lingered in me like an inherited instinct. I drove down, bringing a few of Sophie's favorite snacks. She was sprawled across the couch, curled in a blanket as usual. She didn't greet me, didn't look at me, just glanced at her phone. Mom was busy making soup in the kitchen, occasionally calling out, How is she? Is she feeling any better, Emily? That night, I stayed in my old room. Everything was still the same. The faded floral bed sheets, a few old notebooks I'd left behind from college. I was worn out, but couldn't sleep. The night lamp cast a dim yellow glow across the blue-painted wall. Around 1:00 a.m., I got thirsty. I tiptoed down the hall, just planning to grab a glass of water and head back up, but as I reached the end of the hallway, I heard soft laughter from the living room. I froze. Then came Mom's voice, quiet but unmistakable. She came running back the moment you said something, still easy to control, just like always. I stood there completely still. For a second, I convinced myself I'd misheard. Then Sophie snorted, her voice dripping with mockery. And she lives alone, so she clings to the family to fill the void. Say something harsh and she's back in seconds. Mom sighed. I just feel bad. All these years and she's still alone. She buries herself in work. Never softens up. No wonder she's still single. Women who live like that, they get cold, honey. Sophie laughed louder this time. I used to think if she disappeared, no one would notice until like 4 months later. You mocked me behind my back, Sophie, and thought I'd never hear. I thought, my blood boiling with hurt. I don't remember how long I stood there. I just remember the chill of the hardwood floor creeping up through my bones. I turned away, silent, slow, careful not to make a sound. I didn't want them to know I'd heard. Back in my room, I sat motionless on the edge of the bed. The lamp's yellow light fell on my face like bitter residue. They weren't talking to strangers. They were talking about me, to each other, clearly without hesitation, without shame. You've been using me all along, Mom, and I was too loyal to see it, I thought, my heart breaking at their betrayal. The next morning, Mom made pancakes like nothing happened. Sophie showed up with light makeup and her hair loosely curled, looking refreshed. Mom set the plate on the table. Emily, have something to eat, sweetheart. It's cold out. I made your favorite. I sat down without looking at either of them. I ate slowly. Each bite felt like swallowing something I didn't want to admit. Sophie chatted casually about a new store opening downtown where she was thinking of applying for a job. I said nothing. After breakfast, I did the dishes. They both disappeared upstairs. When I'd finished, I dried my hands and stood in front of the small mirror near the sink, staring straight into my own eyes. And I knew this wasn't the first time they had spoken about me behind my back. 4 days after that weekend in Savannah, I sent a message in the family group chat on Messenger. It's Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Can everyone come to my place? I have something I need to say. It's serious. No one responded right away. The next morning, Mom reacted with a thumbs up emoji. Sophie read the message but didn't reply. My uncle, the one who only called when he needed to borrow money, sent a smiley face emoji. Not a single person asked, "What's going on, Emily? You don't even care enough to ask, do you?" I thought, my resolve strengthening. I spent all of Wednesday preparing. On the dining table, I laid out 3 brown envelopes. Inside each one was a detailed record of everything I had spent on each of them over the past 7 years. Photocopies of receipts, bank transfers, confirmation texts, and screenshots of Sophie promising to pay me back and never following through. I even printed a summary report, complete, organized, nothing left out. The total over $32,000, 0 cents. That evening, by 10 minutes to 6:30, I had coffee brewed and the living room chairs rearranged. At 6:40, Mom arrived with Sophie and Dad. Sophie wore a black hoodie, her curly hair loose around her shoulders, no makeup. Dad looked relaxed, like he was attending a casual church meeting. And Mom, she smiled like nothing had happened. Your place is always so tidy, she said, setting her purse on a chair. I didn't respond. I simply gestured for them to sit. Once all 3 were settled, I sat across from them and placed the envelopes on the table. This is a summary of everything I've paid for each of you over the past 7 years, I said calmly. Along with the invoice for the maple and oak dinner. Mom blinked. Sophie let out a scoffing laugh. You made itemized expense reports? Wow, impressive. You think this is a joke, Sophie? But I'm done being your bank, I said, my voice steady but firm. I nodded. From now on, everything comes with a receipt. Dad leaned back and crossed his arms. What is this, Emily? You want your money back now? I looked him straight in the eyes. No, I'm not asking for anything back. But starting today, every act of help will be transparent because kindness isn't a blank check, and if it's not respected, it won't be offered. You've taken me for granted too long, Dad, I said, my gaze unwavering. Sophie flipped through a few pages and laughed mockingly. $2,800, 0 cents for culinary school. Seriously? I was like 22 years old. You still ca- I nodded. Yes, because you promised to pay it back, and Mom said it was just an advance. Mom hesitated. Emily, you're being too sensitive. We helped each other out of love. No one forced you. Love doesn't exploit, Mom. I shot back. my voice cutting through her excuses. I clenched my fingers slightly. Love doesn't mean draining someone until they're empty. I opened the summary folder. I'm not bringing this up to collect a debt. I just need everyone to understand my silence all these years wasn't acceptance. It was exhaustion. Dad sighed. Sounds like you've been reading too many therapy books. You dismiss me, Dad. But I'm not invisible anymore, I said, my tone resolute. I didn't react. Instead, I pulled out a small notebook and flipped to the last page. It was where I had written down everything I'd wanted to say but never had the chance to. I read each line, my voice steady. No one congratulated me when I got my first job. I skipped my one vacation to cover Sophie's tuition. I was called cold behind my back because I didn't have a boyfriend, was excluded from a dinner I paid for. I looked up, letting my gaze fall slowly on all three of them. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut like glass. For years, I kept quiet, thinking it would keep the peace. But all it did was teach you how easy I was to overlook. Sophie leaned back, arms crossed, smirking. You talk like the whole world's out to get you. I looked her straight in the eye, took one deep. It's not the whole world. Just the three people in this room. You betrayed me, Sophie. And I'm done covering for you, I said, my eyes locked on hers. I paused. Then each word landed sharp and deliberate. I'm not the victim. I'm just the only one who's been carrying everything without anyone ever asking if I was okay. And starting today, that ends. I had planned to stop after that conversation, but something happened that made me realize setting boundaries wasn't enough. 4 days later, I got a call from the bank that stopped me cold. We're calling to verify a suspicious transaction on a credit card recently opened in your name. It was just used to purchase a tablet for $1,400.00 at a store in Savannah. It froze. I'm sorry. I haven't opened any new credit cards. The agent paused. The card was registered 4 weeks ago with a billing address at 1515 Willow Lane. Is that your current address? I closed my eyes. That was my mom's house. I thanked them and hung up. A chill ran from the base of my neck down my spine. That night, I opened Instagram. Sophie had just posted a photo on her balcony, smoothie in hand, brand new iPad on her lap. With the caption, "New toy, new mindset. Let the glow up begin." I stared at the screen, my fingers tightening around the phone. You stole my identity, Sophie, and thought I wouldn't notice, I thought, my blood boiling with rage. I had forgiven in gratitude before, but this was fraud. The next morning, I went to the bank in person. After over an hour of reviewing records, they confirmed a credit card had been opened in my name using my social security number, but the shipping address was Sophie's. First transaction. Second, a premium spa package at Serenity Springs. I didn't say much, just asked them to freeze the account and print the full transaction history. That afternoon, I filed a police report. The officer took detailed notes. When I handed over the transaction evidence, he nodded. We'll forward this to the Financial Crimes Unit. If you have any messages or photos that can link the use of your information to a specific person, please send them in. It was quiet for a moment. Then I pulled out my phone. A message from Sophie popped up on the screen. Sis, I'm sorry. I used your info to sign up for that spa. Please don't be mad. I didn't know what else to do. I was overwhelmed. At the time, I hadn't responded to just read it and moved on. But now, that message became evidence. I took a screenshot and sent it to the police. 4 days later, I received a call from a detective named Ramirez. Miss Emily Foster, we're investigating a financial fraud case involving a credit card opened under your name. We've gathered enough evidence to confirm unauthorized use of personal information. We'd like to ask whether you want to press charges. If necessary, we can go to the suspect's address for a direct statement. I sat still. In my head was the image of Sophie wrapped in a blanket on the couch, looking like a wounded child. I asked, what happens if I don't press charges? We'll keep the case on file. If there's another offense, we can act immediately, I answered slowly. I need some time, but I don't want this swept under the rug. Understood. We'll leave the file open for 90 days. I hung up. That evening, Mom called. Her voice was soft, trying to sound gentle. Emily, Sophie's really panicking. She said you misunderstood the credit card thing. It was just a mistake. Please don't escalate this. I only asked, do you know what billing address was used for the card? She went quiet. I let out a faint laugh. I don't need anyone to confess anymore. The truth is already in the system. You enabled her mom, and now you're scared of the consequences, I said, my voice calm but cutting. 3 days after Detective Ramirez's call, I received a voicemail from Mom. Her voice cracked like she was trying to hold back tears. Emily, I'm begging you. Don't turn this into a grudge. Sophie made a mistake, but she's still your sister. I know you're angry, but if you still care about me, please come home. We need to talk face to face. I replayed that message 5 times, not to analyze her words, but to be sure of one thing. For the first time in years, Mom was calling not to ask for a favor, but to plead. You're only pleading because you're caught, Mom, I thought, my heart unmoved. That afternoon, I drove back to Savannah. I had brought nothing with me except a printed copy of the case file and a small notebook. The familiar cream-colored house appeared behind the white fence. I turned off the engine and stepped out of the car, feeling the chill of October slip beneath my collar. Mom opened the door before I could knock, like she had been waiting. Come in, sweetheart, she said, softening her voice. I made some tea. I stepped inside and saw Sophie curled up on the couch, blanket over her legs, pale face bare of makeup. Dad was seated farther back, holding a coffee mug but not drinking. The whole room was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking. Mom handed me a cup of tea. I didn't take it. I sat across from them and opened my notebook. So, who wants to start? I asked. Sophie looked up, eyes puffy and red, her voice trembling. I didn't mean to. I was desperate. I didn't think you'd find out. I tilted my head. Desperate enough to impersonate someone else's identity and use their money for spa treatments and tech gadgets? You committed fraud, Sophie, and you can't cry your way out of this, I said, my voice steady but fierce. She pressed her lips together. No reply. Mom stepped in. Emily, I'm begging you. You know she didn't do it out of malice. She's just immature. If you report her, her life will be over. I'm asking you. I looked at her. You call that immaturity? Did you read the text she sent her friend? I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshot. Did my sister's info? She'd be fine. She never checks that stuff. Mom's face turned pale. Dad set his coffee cup down silently. Sophie turned away, tears sliding down her cheek. I sat upright. I grew up in a family where silence was treated as virtue and sacrifice expected, but I'm done being silent. Mom clutched the hem of her sweater, voice shaking. You're tearing this family apart, Emily. You tore it apart when you let her steal from me, I shot back, my eyes locked on hers. I gave a soft laugh. No, I'm just showing you the consequences of things you've always avoided. I turned to Sophie, my voice low but sharp. I didn't break anything. You were the one who reached in, took what you wanted, and assumed I'd keep smiling and paying like always. But not this time. You crossed the line. Sophie buried her face in her hands, sobbing. I didn't mean. I cut her off. Don't say you didn't mean to. You were clear-headed enough to enter Mom's address, smart enough to brag to your friend, and calculated enough to hope I wouldn't notice, so now be strong enough to face you. You betrayed my trust, Sophie, and I'm done protecting you, I said, my voice a quiet thunder. No one said anything. Mom just wiped her tears, avoiding eye contact. After a while, Dad finally spoke, voice low and hoarse. What are you planning to do next? I looked at him for a long moment. I haven't decided, but let me be clear. From now on, if anyone in this family uses my name, my information, or my trust, there won't be another sit-down like today. I stood, gathered my notebook, and, Mom, if you truly want to fix this, you should start by teaching your daughter what boundaries mean. I left that night, just as the sky turned dark, a light drizzle brushing against the windshield. Mom didn't walk me out. Her face screwed dark. Dad didn't say a word. I drove straight back to my apartment in Savannah. No music, no GPS, just silence guiding the way. The next morning I woke up early, brewed a strong cup of coffee, opened my laptop, and booked a one-way flight to Boise, Idaho, a place no one in my family had ever thought about, let alone cared enough to find. I left my old job after completing the handover. My manager asked, Moving because of family? I just smiled. 3 weeks later, I rented a small apartment near the woods, just a 10-minute drive from downtown. The place was old but clean. The wooden floors still carried the scent of cold air. The landlord was an elderly woman named Margaret, the first person in years who asked me, "Are you really okay?" without following it up with a request or an invoice. I didn't buy expensive furniture, just a few essentials: a soft couch, a wooden bookshelf, a desk by the window overlooking a misty valley. In the mornings, I brewed coffee. In the afternoons, I read. At night, I cooked simple meals for myself. There were no texts from Mom asking to borrow money, no midnight calls from Sophie needing help with the power bill, and no one was draining me anymore. I started freelancing, doing graphic design for a few small businesses in the mountains. The clients paid on time, respected boundaries, and not a single one called me cold just because I knew how to take care of myself. One early morning, while watering the plants by my window, the doorbell rang. It was the mail carrier. He handed me a yellow envelope, no return address, blue ink, surprisingly neat handwriting. Inside was a handwritten note and a check for $600, 0 cents with a note at the bottom. My share of the maple and oak dinner. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Ethan, my younger cousin, the quiet one at family gatherings. He had been there that night, said nothing, didn't laugh with the others, just listened. The note only had a few lines. "Emily, I know things went too far. I saw it all, but I stayed quiet because I was scared. It was wrong not to stand with you sooner. This is the least I can do right now. It's not about money. It's about what's right. Thank you for doing what most people in our family never had the courage to. You saw me, Ethan, when they wouldn't." I thought, my heart warmed by his gesture. When I finished reading, I leaned back in my chair, gripping the letter while my eyes lingered on that final sentence. I no longer felt like the tolerant big sister or the family ATM or the invisible shadow who only appeared when someone needed saving. From Boise, the world looked different. I didn't expect my family to understand me. Mom's approval had lost its weight, and Sophie's sympathy. I stopped chasing what was never there. I didn't give them my new address. I didn't post on social media. I left no trail, and strangely enough, they didn't come looking. Maybe they finally understood. I wasn't there anymore. Not physically, not in the role they had placed me in. I never reached out again. No New Year's texts, no Christmas cards signed to our beloved daughter, no birthday calls, and, of course, I didn't call them either. The last time I heard Sophie's name was from an old friend during a random chat at a local bookstore. "Isn't your sister working at that boutique store in Boise? I heard she's been kind of quiet lately." I just smiled. Didn't confirm. Didn't deny Sophie was no longer part of my life. Mom called my old number a few times. I didn't pick up. Later I changed it. No announcements, no explanations, because honestly, I didn't owe them anything anymore. I didn't attend my cousin's wedding either. The invitation was sent to my old office. I didn't go. I used to think if I ever cut ties, they'd lash out, blame me, try to reel me back to preserve the family. But they didn't. Because what they needed wasn't me. It was the version of me who knew her place. The good daughter who found the money when they asked, smiled through the pain, and stayed silent when they disrespected her. Once I abandoned that role, they had no use for me anymore. Winter in Boise this year is colder than last, but my little apartment is warmer than it's ever been. I decorated my Christmas tree alone. On each tiny ornament I picked out from the local craft fair. Not expensive, but each one marked something personal. I baked cinnamon cookies, played jazz, read books under a soft yellow lamp. I had spent my entire youth fearing the label selfish. Every time I said no, I was called unfeeling. But no one noticed I was the one being emptied out. Now I no longer ask permission to live my own life. I don't apologize for disappearing. I don't explain why I never went back because, simply put, I don't need to. I don't need to be present just to fill the void others left behind. I don't need to pay for someone else's poor choices. I don't need to break myself trying to be the good one for a family that never truly saw my worth. I don't wait for Mom's calls. I no longer hope for an apology from Sophie. I've stopped searching for signs that they finally understand my worth. Their recognition isn't what I need. Clarity within myself is. One early fall day, while walking through the woods near my home, I came across an elderly woman trying to find her way back to the parking lot. She asked if I could walk with her. Along the way, she asked, "Have you lived here long?" "You seem pretty." I paused for a moment, then smiled. "I just found peace not long ago, and I plan to keep it for as long as I can. I fought for this peace, and no one can take it from me," I thought, my heart full of quiet strength. She nodded, her eyes warm and kind. No more words were needed, because perhaps only those who've escaped a place they once called home can truly understand the price of peace. And I paid that price. But what I got in return was a life that no longer belongs to anyone else. Not to my mother, not to Sophie, not to a family that only remembered me when they needed something. Now, that life, it's mine. Emily's story is a sobering reminder that not every relationship labeled family is worth holding on to. Some ties exist only to exploit, not to love. Choosing to walk away isn't cruelty, it's courage to choose yourself. In reality, peace often begins with one firm decision: letting go of those who only see you as a given. What do you think about Emily's journey? Would you have the strength to do the same to protect yourself? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more stories about family, loyalty, and the choices that shape us.